Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another in between space, in between seasons 2 and 3. We recently just went through the God series, which was interesting to say the least. We enjoyed everyone's feedback and energy. Um, really love that people were more engaging this season. Perhaps it was a topic or maybe how we creatively were expressing, but whatever have you, it's awesome to see that more and more people are starting to experience Theopoetics, and that is our mission. Um, as we prepare for the next series, which is going to be the feminine series, it's going to be dope. We first would like to thank everybody, seriously, who have been journeying with us from the beginning, who has jumped in here and there and is still with us. Thank you. Appreciate it. Your openness, your reflections, your presence has been key to keeping this Theopoet going. um, so yeah, let's get into it, right? And sort of in a reflection mode, we are reflecting on this past season and the intentions that we have set forth when we started this season, when we were thinking to even try to attempt to talk about God, describe God in various ways. As a reminder, this was not a declaration or statement to say that this is or this is not, but instead was an attempt to blend those realms so that what is can consider what is not, and what is not can consider what is. And that is reflective of an in between fluxation. We're fluxing between fluidly. You could even say, in terms of metamodernism, we're oscillating between these issues and these feelings and these experiences that are within me and resonate with many of you around the world, just as being a human being. So this previous season, we were reflecting on divine encounters, moments of transcendence, intimacy, as well as revelation. This concept of emerging from within, and what did that look like possibly? Now, we could have created 100,000 of Theopoems on these topics, but that's not the point. The point was just to kind of give samples of these things, to inspire, to evoke your own emerging. If you think for a second that this podcast and this journey is about me, you're missing the point. It's about you. And whatever we're sharing here through Theopoetry is meant to inspire you and meant to remind you that it doesn't have to be that way. And you can make those changes little by little. Just a few questions came up for this season talking about God. What does it mean to find God in the spaces we inhabit? How does the divine reveal itself in our suffering, in our joy, and even in the mundane, the everyday, the hustle and bustle? Like the taste of food as well, or the color of a rainbow. These were things that we can experience and see day to day on a practical scale. We walk through illuminating the multi dimensions of God, or we try to anyway. And that's the key point of Theopoetics. It's an attempt. It's a trying. It's not about absolute knowing and absolute not knowing, or it's not about stating facts or converting. It's about sharing. It's about expressing primarily. What you're witnessing and listening and experiencing with my voice is my process of healing through these things that we're bringing up. And if you resonate with that, then you're probably going through a similar healing or process where you're questioning things and you're saying it doesn't have to be that way. Why is it like this? Maybe you think different from most people around you, and you're thinking, well, maybe I should blend in. Theopoetics doesn't persuade us to blend in or conform. Instead, Theopoetics embraces this rebellious energy to be oneself, regardless of what status quo is saying is or is not. Um, so we're just going to get into a few of the Theopoems this time instead of going through every single one. We decided to just talk about the ones you guys were just really more drawn to. Starting with the Theopoem "A Space." This Theopoem invited us to reflect on what our inner spaces hold and how the divine moves within us. This is different, right? A lot of us come from the indoctrination and beliefs that God is one thing, God appears one way. But when we tend to zoom out from our everyday small personal lives, and we start to see that we're part of a nation, a collective nation that is led primarily by these larger religious beliefs, such as Christian belief of a monotheistic, interpretation of God, meaning one God, right? And we're not fighting over whether it's one or many, but Theopoetics invites us to see and experience the fluidity, the oscillation between the one and the many and the one. Whereas we don't have to pick one, they both exist simultaneously. And so it's not a fight of who's right and wrong, but instead it's an attempt to listen to the indifferences, listen to the other, exchange, but that can't take place until we start to acknowledge these deeper, inner, multidimensional spaces inside of ourselves. That can look like shadow work, going to therapy, taking accountability, acknowledging what you have or have not done or said, or how you say things. These are all examples of exploring these many different spaces within us. And then realizing that the universe, the space, is also within us just as much as we are within it. It's like a constant fluid relationship. And this is where we get the terms oscillation from, like it just makes sense in that way. There's other terms too. It's not just like this is the only one, but in terms of meta modern thinking, which tends to try to bring in the fold everything, promote more inclusion, um, as well as emphasize the and others. There's not just one. So yeah, the next Theopoem was Mi Pastelon, which was pretty interesting because we were talking about a Hispanic cuisine, but that Hispanic cuisine, that food, also has other multidimensional values, such as historical values, cultural values, economic values. And so in this Theopoem, we were really looking at it as it became a symbol of God, something so indescribable, something so beyond our recollection. Like we're experiencing it, but we just don't fully understand it. But it's enjoyable temporarily right now, right? Just like the meal, is temporary until, you eat it and then it's gone and then it turns into something else through your body. It's not the same, you know? And so it was really interesting as while we reflected eating on this meal that the ingredients themselves, like who thought of putting these ingredients together Did this come out of an environment that had an abundance of resources? Or was this just a creative way to take limited resources and create an enjoyable meal that then infused culturally, and so on and so on? It becomes its own thing. And so we were just thinking about that, like, wow, something as simple as this Hispanic meal and its heritage, its origins, like, how did it come about? And it's really fascinating to even start exploring these things in terms of the foods you like, your favorite foods. We love pizza, but clearly pizza is not from Italy originally. Like, this is something we've come to learn too. And um, even in Italy, they eat so much cleaner compared to what we would get here in, like, say, New York pizzeria or something. It's just not the same. So learning about where the food you enjoy to eat comes from and how it came about is something that we really appreciate as a Theopoet, because we're ingesting this meal, this energy, this history, this meaning and symbols. We're putting that in us. We should be mindful of what we're putting in us, at least to that scale, of consciousness. The next Theopoem we wanted to talk about was Mirror. Mirror challenged us to look at ourselves. You know, um, there was times where we were so angry that we thought we were angry at other people, and then we start to realize, no, we're not angry at them per se. We're angry at the traits that they're carrying or the patterns that they have that we have inside of us. It's like we're angry at the patterns that others have, but we find those patterns in ourselves, so we're really mad at ourselves. We're mad that we have those patterns, or maybe we don't like those patterns in ourselves. And so when we see it in others, we get angry or something, or we just don't like it. But we come to learn that this inward journey is just a self reflection. When you look at others, they are you and you are them, and you just don't even know it. You know, in my short experiences here on Earth, being a human, you know, everyone's angry about something, but when they really sit down to, like, think about it and meditate on it, they're just angry at themselves. Maybe they've fallen short. Maybe they haven't done things. Maybe they don't feel beautiful, all these things. And so out of this raw anger that is misunderstood comes projections, and we just project things onto other people. So the Theopoem mirror also brings to our awareness the things that we tend to project and how it reflects right back to us. And we need to deal with that. We need to take accountability for that. We can't let these things continue to exist in a fantasy where we have someone outside of ourselves that will take it away, or heal it or fix it. You know, um, it's just not a healthy pattern to assume that someone else is going to solve your problems, And so when we look in that mirror and we see ourselves, there's a deconstruction, there's um also reconstruction, but ultimately we have to acknowledge the things that are really there. And a lot of times what we think we see are just what we desire to see, instead of being practical and seeing what we really are dealing with. The next Theopoem is a smell. This Theopoem was special in a sense because the smell that we're describing was actually a smell from our grandmother's kitchen when we were little. And we still remember that smell to this day. We smell it sometimes when we walk into Spanish restaurants. Um, and it's the smell of the Spanish food, the rice, the beans, the chicken, the steak, the sauce, the plátanos, like the frying. And so, like, these smells to me are divine. And they're divine because it overlaps with my interpreted divine memory of my grandmother. Like, to me, we're referring to a time of a span of a year that we spent with our grandmother. And to me, that was heaven on earth. And ever since, we were 6, 7 years old, we've been trying to get back to that kind of happiness, that kind of joy, that kind of heaven on earth experience. And we've been slowly but surely building it for ourselves. Um, my grandmother would be pleased, proud maybe. But building it for ourselves, that space where, you can thrive and grow and prosper and feel love, you know. And so in this Theo poem, the smell captured all that for me. God was in the smell, it attracted me, it drew me from whatever space we were in to come towards it, closer and closer. It reminds me of my own spiritual journey. you know um Along my path, we kind of got a theopoetic smell, a whiff of God, and was like, that smells good. Like, it smells like a freshly baked bread or pastry or something. It's just so fresh and it's just hard to put into words, actually. But you know what I mean if you've ever experienced that kind of smell in a nice fresh bakery. You're just like, I gotta have this. This tastes so good. It's on a whole nother level compared to a processed food that's in a package and has all these preservatives and stuff. So again, like, we had this kind of theopoetic whiff of God, and ever since we've been, following this trail of ascent, to find God, um, to find where this magnificent smell is coming from. Um, but yeah, the next Theo poem we want to talk about is colors. Colors reminds us to see beyond boundaries, such as black and white, beyond binaries, you know, and embrace the vibrancy of spectrum. This is very challenging, right? We live in societies that promote sort of one way binary structures. There's legal and there's illegal. There's right, there's wrong. There's male, female. There's up, there's down. There's night, there's day. There's employed and unemployed. There's wealthy and poor. There's haves and have-nots. So this is just a glimpse of what we deal with on a larger structure, a larger scale that we don't really think about. It's just in the background. It's so infused in the very matrix that we are in and existing in that we cannot tell it apart from our reality. We've accepted it for the most part. And so colors invites us to see that there's a hue, there's a spectrum of colors. And interesting enough, human eyes can only see in a very limited, small fraction of the light spectrum. That's crazy. When we learned about this, it really just reinforced we cannot believe everything we see. You know, and it really pushed us to become more intuitive, which could be interpreted as more spiritual, but more intuitive, like that inner gut feeling that seems to know beyond what you know. Um, and ever since that, we kind of sum that up or describe that as spirit led. Being spirit led is leaning on your intuition, the spirit, God within that's interconnected to everything, you know? Um, so yeah, the colors, it's like, it's crazy how we get so focused on two colors. even among racial issues, just, among humans, is dark and light. You got dark skins, you got light skins, and it seems like there's a lot of privilege amongst the light skins, for the most part. Not saying that people with dark skin don't have privileges. They do. They have their own, But when we, again, zoom out and think about this from a world perspective, light skinned people seem to have an invisible set of powers that dark skinned people just don't possess. It's really interesting and weird. And yes, we can call that racism, but at this point, it's a lot more complicated than that, you know, um, because now we're talking also beyond the outside colors and we're talking towards the inner colors. You refer to them as aura colors, our energy colors. And so our inner colors don't always reflect our outer color. Um, and so that Theopoem really draws us to think about these things. The next one is a rainbow, which is similar to colors, but it emphasizes that God itself is a spectrum like the rainbow, including all the colors, the ones we don't see and the ones we do see. God is that thing that we can see sometimes and can't see all the time, you know? And last but not least, this Theopoem called Krista. Krista invites us to remember the story of Marisela Escobedo Ortiz, who was brutally murdered in Mexico. And it was just devastating to hear about this movement that's happening around the world where they are killing women. And it made me also think about how Christ was murdered, right? And how that ordeal happened. And then the numbers lined up, the 3 days, the three murders, and the resurrection of these figures, whether real or not, but symbolic, moved people to act against the empire or the status quo. So it was really interesting to take her story and parallel it to Yeshua's story, as the Hebrew Christ, um, and see that their sacrifice, their murders were similar and yet almost a millennia apart. It just goes to show like this is happening to a lot of people in various ways around the world. And it didn't just happen to one person out of all humanity. It's happening to all of us on a large scale. And someone, everyday person like uh, Maricela, she was a mom that became a Christ figure, an advocate figure. We found that so powerful and moving that we wanted to create this Theo poem in her memory. And so, yeah, that was that season, the God series. Um, it was hard. It was very difficult. We are not gonna sugarcoat it. These Theo poems were very well thought out and took months at a time to put together. Um, we had to go to a place that was in between worlds. It was the only way to really pull in from the what we see and what we don't see, the spiritual and the physical. Um, but yeah, we had a good time at the same time creating this because we love to express like this, our thoughts, our ideas, our feelings, and our experiences. Um, as we transition to a new season, we just wanted to leave you with a question. How will you carry the lessons from this season into your lives, into the next season, even? This is not an ending, but a threshold, a doorway to the next season of exploration. In the journey ahead, we will continue to seek, to question, and to create space for the sacred to dwell within and dwell around us. Let's take this moment to breathe, to reflect, and to give thanks to the journey we've been on and the journey ahead. As we step forward, may we do so with open hearts, with curiosity, and with courage to embrace the divine in all forms. We hope that you enjoy the upcoming season, focused on femininity, the feminine. And we hope that you took something away from any of these Theopoems that could help you. And on that note, thank you so much. We look forward to working on the next season and releasing it soon. You should probably see the first episode of the next season in February, early February. Thank you.